That was awesome, and I want to real quick thank Matt so much for letting us show that. It's a sneak preview, not a premiere. Sneak preview. And I see a lot of people who are also like Dusty was in the film for like a second. I saw him. This is Raphael Orlove. Went to a rally school. If you see any rally content on Jalopnik, it's because of this guy. And he also rolled a Baja Bug, which I think is the best introduction for Raphael Orlove I can get. And he's going to take away the panel. Here we go. Oh, we're going to do real quick. And at the end, there are mics on either side. So if you have questions, we can line up if we have time. There's a big period of time in between the films. So if you have a question you really want, we're going to be in the lobby. So you can come find us. All right. Here you go.
All right, so give it up for the movie. That was great. All right, so we got, aside from all the rally people who are in the audience, we have a good panel for you. So we've got Brian Scotto of Hoonigan. He's the brand fellow. If you see Hoonigan stuff, it's because of him. Matt, the guy with the sideburns, he made the movie that you just enjoyed. Ken Block is a guy who you know, does some video stuff. You may have heard of him. And Bill Caswell got a $500 BMW, raced it in WRC Mexico, and sold his life rights to Jeremy Renner. So that's something. All right, so my first question is for you, Matt. So what was your inspiration for making this movie?
Rally, I've been involved in rally for 10 years, and I used to drive myself, and we had all these just bonkers stories, like trailers falling apart and building cars in the parking lot, and I always thought that there was a really good story, and every single person involved with rally, it doesn't matter who they are, has the same set of stories, right? Like 10 years of them. Like, we've rolled trailers and all this crazy stuff, and I thought that'd be something cool to watch. So me driving, and then I ran out of money. My story is Chris's story, almost exactly the same. And then I got into doing this now, which as a full-time cinematographer, I just had all the stuff. I was like, I should just combine the two. So
Wow.
it worked out.
All right, so Ken. Your question is, so you're the most famous American rally driver at the moment, and the question is, how do we change that? How do we get more American rally drivers? Basically, we want you to get out of the spotlight.
Didn't the movie answer that question? I'd actually like to talk about the movie for a second.
That's fair.
Rally is I grew up just as a rally fan, and for me to be able to get in a car and actually race was just really a dream come true. And Matt kind of captures a really good part of like what happens at a rally and what goes on, and there really is a really dynamic range of drivers and cars and opportunity, and it's an absolutely amazing sport, especially as a driver, and it's one of the worst spectator sports there is, and that's why it's great that guys like this make movies about it. We drive all over the countryside, and unfortunately as a spectator you go to one spectator spot of a 10-mile stage and you see one corner, and it genuinely is a tough sport to be a spectator, but the fans absolutely love it. And it's great to see like the TV programs like the WRC does, but a film like this really captures like the emotion and what goes on behind the scenes of a guy like Chris Duplessis and Petter Solberg and like the way a lot of those guys think and the way that they see things, and it's so many different stories that are all unique, and it really genuinely is an amazing sport. But so few people understand it and really get to see so many sides of it, like what Matt was able to present here. So that's why I'm really stoked about it. That's why I'm here. I'm really stoked that Matt made this, and to see it come out and see it be so good, it's really cool to be a part of it.
All right, so I'll build on that question for you, Bill. So I don't mind asking sort of challenging questions, because the nice thing about this is that rally sort of seems to be on the rise these days, which is very nice. But there are a lot of challenges that we've seen. So obviously the big theme of the movie, aside from cars going sideways, was money. And the other question was accessibility. So what struck you in the movie about making rally more accessible, or some of the themes which can really draw on people? You're someone who knows something about getting people interested in rally.
Got a movie deal. You should be rallying.
Yeah, the moment they start making it, then I'll be racing a lot more. But No, I think the interesting part of the movie is that rally is very accessible if you want it badly enough, and it, like Ken said, it is extremely expensive. But at the back half of the field, there are a bunch of guys running $500 cars they built in their garage, and they're racing with their friends, and no one's getting paid, and they're all sharing a hotel room, and it's miserable. But if you want it badly enough, it's there. You don't need a six-figure car to race. But the cool thing is you can progress to that level if your driving takes you there, and if you promote yourself the way we saw, like Antoine Lestage saying how he sold himself, and next thing you know, 10 years later, the world knows who he is, and he's got sponsors, and he's racing. That, for me, is really, really cool.
All right, so I'll ask you, Scotto, a similar question. All right, so that was an interesting point that John Boffin brought up in the movie, was that it's not just about selling the cars, it's not about selling the sponsorship, it's about selling people now. So you're someone who used to work at 0 to 60 magazine. You were in charge of sort of making sure the stories, picking stories, making sure they were popular. So are you someone who, how do you balance that, or what do you look for is in terms of just the rally content, cars going sideways, cars braking, cars doing that, or something, is there something about the people that really sticks out to viewers?
I think what John said in the movie was really kind of important. It's like you're just trying to sell sponsors to 3,000, 5,000 people showing up in the woods. As Ken said, for any of you who've spectated rally, it is the worst sport in the world to watch. You head out to the stages, you get to see the car pass once, and and that's it. But so it is a kind of a hard thing to get behind. But I think when I first met Ken in 2005, it was a struggle to trying to get rally to a point where people actually took it and actually understood what it was. All the other magazines at the time were doing their biannual front of the book story on rally that was all of 300 words. And when we started 0 to 60, we wanted to do a lot more on things like rally and try to bring that out. And obviously, X Games and all that's kind of brought rally a lot more to the forefront. And to what you were saying before, rally is continuing to grow. And I think looking at even looking at GRC and different things this year of how people are looking at rally cars, and actually really it's become a sport that's well beyond what it was in 2005. And in 2005, I read European magazines because nothing in the States was covering anything about rally. And now, look at Jalopnik. You guys are actually doing stuff on that. And we're all sitting here watching a documentary about rally, and it's great to see that grow bigger. But to, even, it's funny, I watched the movie, and obviously I'm a bit biased. I've worked on Ken's team since, worked with him for a long time, but worked on it since 2010. And yes, there's the struggles of the guys at the bottom trying to get in, but trust me, even with our big factory program, there's a lot of struggles. And, as you get bigger, everyone expects more and more, for everyone who's seen, like the Jimkhana films, every year we have to make that better, and we do that to help us fund to go do things like this in the woods. I think people need to realize that how much of the stuff we do it because, like Bill said, we have that passion and that love to go out into the stages and do this type of stuff, and we do everything we possibly can, from making the Jimkhana films to making the apparel and all this stuff that you see. This whole program is to be able for us to go do all this stuff. So yeah, it's from a marketing side, and back to what you said with the original magazine thing, it's like, rally is exciting and it's fun, and that's the reason why it's a great sport to show, and I think you saw that, Matt, in filming all this. I mean, you obviously were a participant, but being behind the lens is a completely different aspect, and I've spent my entire life being more of the behind the lens and showing it, and it's something that the minute you show someone, they love. Like, not everyone's going to love NASCAR, not everyone's going to love Grand Am, but there's just something fun about throwing a car sideways through the trees at 90 miles an hour that makes for awesome entertainment. And maybe it's not the best thing to watch as a spectator, but sometimes when guys like Matt will bring it to you in a way that you can really, see, or magazines do it, or Jalopnik does it, I think that's where the sports really began to grow. I've been talking too long. I just got someone raise their hand to tell me I've been talking too long. So,
All right, well, at least you segued into a good point about, the great thing about rallying is that you do just take one look at it. And if you talk to a bunch of people, they say, oh, I watched a video on YouTube and now I'm here at a rally. Or, I saw this, that, the other thing. I saw a picture of a Subaru and now I'm here. And so, Matt, you're the person now you're a person now who's actually making this content that people see and get hooked on. And so the other night you were telling a story about just one shot in particular. And it was the jump at Concord Pond. I wonder if you could tell the story of how you got that shot.
For sure. So shooting rally is literally as hard as competing in it, because just like spectating, if I'm on the ball 100% and I do everything perfect, I get to see the cars 6 to 8 times at a US event. At a WRC event, it's like 4 times. You know, I'm walking 8 miles with a 45-pound camera on my back in knee-deep snow, freezing my balls off, and like it's extremely, extremely difficult. And then you got to rely on the drivers doing something cool too, which doesn't always happen. You know, or not running me over. And the thing about Ken is like he's always flat out, and it's why people like him, because no matter what, Ken just flat out. And sometimes it's probably a negative thing from like a championship point standpoint, but it doesn't matter because anyway. So you go out there, and we had to dial back the Ken content a little bit because we have so many really good bangers. To get to the Concord Pond thing, Kelly, my wife, who's up here, we went out there. We went to the spot. Neil McDade, who's this Irishman who goes and drives every single stage. He has more time than I do. He drives every single stage. He's always like, oh, for sake, Matt, you got to go to this spot. And, like, just swearing at me. And so I'm like, all right, Neil, I'll go to your spot. And most of the time, they're really good. So we go to this spot, and Antoine was first on the road, I think. Antoine comes over and is like, brr, like, 6 inches. I'm like, oh, shit. And then, but he had a new car. So David comes over, same thing. I'm like, this spot's a blowout. And Neil's down the road from me, and he's like, I'm sorry, man. It's, And then Ken, my Irish is poor. It's like a cross between Irish and Jamaican. And Ken comes around the crest, and I'm standing there, with Ken in my back. I look, I'm like, man, Ken's not lifting. And he whales this jump, just like monumental. It's not like, 10% greater or 20% greater. It's like levels of magnitude greater, like 10 times greater. Higgins had like 20 feet of air lengthwise, and Ken was like 200 feet. It was just huge. And so like Kelly was shooting the other angle, and I was like just arms up in the air. I was so stoked. And Neil comes running up. I told you, man. I told you this is the best spot, and I was like, all right, I can go home, because really, if you get a shot like that, like just one of those really cool shots, that's enough for the weekend. So from there on, I was relaxing, It's really hard to shoot rally, and so that was cool.
So what's interesting, Ken Block, I'm going to use a very deliberate pun. So the thing about rallying is that we know is that it's very hard to get to see. You've got a professional, and he's working out, and even he's having trouble getting a single shot. Now we have things which are coming in. You're taking a sideways approach into rally, pardon the pun, of going with GRC and Gymkhana Grid. And so I wonder how you think about those two events in terms of rally. Is it just in terms of raising knowledge about cars that go sideways, that have four-wheel drive, or what was your input, your start to getting those programs started, and sort of where do you see them going?
Wow. I could talk for like 30 minutes on that question. Not really for me. I was a fan of rally as a kid. That's just what I love. Colin McRae was like really my biggest hero, and really once I got into rally and really started to enjoy it and push myself, I really wanted to do more than just show up at the event and race the race car down a road. I grew up skateboarding, snowboarding, riding dirt bikes, and even racing dirt bikes. But most of the time I was doing it, I was playing. The competition side of all that was only like 5%. But with, motorsports, it's flipped. 95% of the time you're racing. The other 5% you're just practicing in the woods right before the event. So really for me, these are just amazing vehicles. People ask me all the time, like, what's your dream car? I'm like, it's right there. Like, these cars are amazing. I can abuse the shit out of them, and they'll turn on a dime with 600 horsepower. So to be able to take that and go do Gymkhana and go do rallycross and do stage rally, not only here in the States, but amazing places like New Zealand and Finland. It's just an incredible thing that I've gotten myself into, and I have a bunch of very happy sponsors that help me go along and do it all over the world. So I'm very lucky to be in the position that I am, and I'm pushing as hard as I can to continue to make everything better, such as having Gymkhana Grid and X Games this summer, and GRC that's been part of X Games for many years now, and of course, the WRC and Rally America, which are just great forms of stage rally. So to answer sort of back to your question, it's really, for me, it's just continuing to push and trying to make these sports be some of the best sports that they can possibly be. Gymkhana and rallycross are really quite tiny in the realms of what motorsports are in this world. If you compare it to Formula One, NASCAR, WRC, MotoGP, like they are blips. So I would love to see them become much bigger than they currently are. And I'm, always putting my full effort into trying to get more fans, and help the sports continue to grow.
Awesome. So, Bill, I'll ask you another question. I'll probably hesitate. I could just say, just tell me a story, but we'll be here all day.
I've been warned to not tell stories and keep my talking to a minimum.
So, the question here is about getting people not just interested in watching rally. I want to ask you sort of. You had an interesting point about that it's easy for people to get into rally. You were saying earlier that just what's nice about rally is any car can enter, and so you have a lot of experience with entering basic cars. And I don't know. So, what's your perspective on getting people actually into rally here in America?
I mean, for me, it's about getting off the sofa and just showing up. And if that means you're in a cheap car and you built it in a week, for me, that's better off just to be out there. I've seen guys who start these car builds, and 3 years later, they're still welding the cage and perfecting the skid plates. And I'm like, you could have ran 30 events by now. And if you didn't build a world-class Subaru, if you just went and bought some cheap front-wheel drive car, you could have been doing hundreds of stage miles by now. So, I don't think the beat-up, box $500 race car is the way to go. But for some people, if it gets you out there, it's a way to start. And then once you get better and you get better at driving, you start spending your money on another car. I mean, we saw in the movie when Matt interviewed John, however you Van Landen, Dan. Yeah, exactly. And he was talking about guys, they spend a ton of money building the car, and they run like 2 years and they leave. And that's it, because the car costs so much money. So for me, it is about just racing. It's about getting any car you can and having the most fun with that car. And if it means you're not fast, but you're driving at the limit of your car and the limit of you, and maybe that's all you have, but at least you're out there on stage competing with what you have and dreaming someday to be in Ken's car, the top of the field, racing the WRC. That's what's cool about rally. It's for everyone. Everyone can race in it. Anyone can work on the cars. Anyone can volunteer. Anyone can show up. It's just a matter of getting off the sofa and going to a rally. Did I answer the question?
Ish. I think enough. So my next one's for Matt. So this movie didn't start out as this movie started out with a slightly different goal than how it ended up being. It was going to be, as I understood, a story about Chris, and it turned into something which was, much nicer, sort of a broader look. And so the other thing that was interesting about it was it turned out to be maybe less about the cars than I expected and more about the people who were involved. And so I'm wondering if there are any good stories that didn't quite make it into the cut.
Yeah, we have 17 terabytes of data, and the interview with John Van Landingham was 7 hours long, and I'm not joking at all. Like, literally, I used every single mag my camera has. I had to plug my camera in, which I've never once done. I had to get an extension cord, and World War II, World War I, talking about bombers, crazy stuff. But after 20 minutes, he'd come back to rally, and he'd be like, hey, anyway, and that means this. And there was the biggest regret, I guess, that I have about doing this film, and this is how I'm going to answer the question, is that there's so many stories I missed. And I go to a rally, and this was all me. I only had one other person for Jamaica and 100 Acre Wood this year, which was kind of a blowout because it snowed so bad. So the rest of the time, I'm just trying to run around and get as much as I can get, and I can't be everywhere at once. And a rally takes place over 1,000 square miles sometimes, and I'm like, oh, this dude's car's burning up, and I'm like, oh, I can't get there. And this dude just rolled over there, and he's crying on a stump. Well, I missed that too. And that's the biggest bummer, is there's so much stuff that happens in rally that you can't get there unless you have 40 dudes in 6 helicopters and warp drive or something, because it's just so spread out. And so I tried to include as much as I could possibly get of all the stories that all the pieces that tell that story, that rally is really awesome and it's really hard. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're Petter Solberg, you're a world rally champion that got paid millions of dollars. He's in the exact same boat as Chris, right? Just on a very different scale, Every single person that's in the film has the same issues, but just on a different scale. So I tried to tell as much of those as I could, but there's stuff that we left in the hard drives. There's bonus features that are on the DVD, and there's a lot of stuff I left in the woods for sure.
All right, so that was my sort of one nerdy question about you, but we're going to open it up to questions from the floor. We have some people who are in the movie up here, so and anyone else who has any questions. There are 2 microphones, one on either side, just as there was before. And if you have any questions, please make your way to the sides and ask away, or just shout.
For Matt, do you have plans for a limited or a full release? And like when would that be?
Not theatrical. Our premiere is next week in Grand Rapids, which we sold out. I'm super stoked about. And then the October 2nd, it goes on sale. So you can buy it on the web via DVD or download or stream, depending on your preferred method of watching movies nowadays. And other than that, no. I mean, I'm pumped that I'm stoked to be pumped that people enjoy it so much that it's it's a niche documentary about a niche sport. I tried to make it as broad audience as you possibly can while still keeping it as real as possible. My goal was always that my mom would enjoy watching it, and she doesn't care about cars at all. So I wanted to tell that story, but I don't know that it's got the appeal to like be in theaters or something like that. And we're tied to a whole bunch of crazy licensing agreements with the WRC and some other people, and I can't necessarily do a whole bunch of screenings. So you can buy it, and I'd be stoked about that.
Matt?
Yeah. First of all, ridiculous film. Really, really. Everyone can.
Thank you.
You mentioned the fact that you get as many shots as you got. Now this is for you, Matt. As many shots as you got by yourself is off the chain. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I wanted to cry a lot.
Yeah. Do you think that your film can help sell the sport to a TV network that would want to focus more coverage on rally, especially in America, which would then lead to drivers being able to get better sponsorships and more visibility? And do you find that the logistics of covering rally that you had to deal with are the same kind of arguments that TV networks make for not wanting to cover rally?
Yeah, that's
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, totally, and it's such a multifaceted answer. Someone's going to put their hand up if I answer the whole thing. But a number of people have been like, "Oh, dude, this film's going to be so awesome. It's going to save rally." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't need that on my shoulders, first of all. And second of all, you haven't seen it yet, right? You guys are the first people to see it besides my wife and my assistant editor." So I've heard that a number of times. If it can help anybody, I'm super pumped. I love the sport. This sport is a part of me. It's my life more than anything. And if I can help it in any way, then I'm glad to do it. A number of people have talked to us about doing broadcasts of the film, which obviously has some licensing stuff that I have to sort through to do that. And if we could put this out in broadcast and people watched it and networks were more interested, then I'm cool with that. I'd love it. The downside is that, a lot of TV networks don't want to cover it because they can go shoot. I'm not going to bash GRC or something, but they can shoot a GRC event with a 4-camera standard ESPN package and do this thing, and then they're done, and they've got a live TV show. Well, you come to shoot rally, you're not doing it with less than, the 30, 40 dudes or $100,000 an episode or something like that, and you need helicopters, and it the more the better for helicopters, but it gets expensive. The flip side of that is I also think they kind of do it wrong. Also, I don't think they show enough of like the grit of it. They just want to. A lot of people they're like, oh, it's so extreme, and they just do the marketing side, which is cool. But there's all these cool stories, like the WRC used to do when they used to have Colin like kicking the shit out of his Focus on the side of the road, and he's like, you can see he's been crying because there's dust, tears, and when you miss that, you miss the sport. And so if someone wanted me to shoot the sport, I'd be glad to. For TV.
All right, so time for one more question.
What do they do different in Europe and in other parts of the country that I see a film clip and I see people lining the road, they have to move out of the way so that the cars go past. And in America, you just see patches of little corners.
I think that's like a philosophical question for the differences between Europe and America. You could ask the same thing about soccer or tennis or any other sports. I think Americans don't like to put in a lot of effort to watch their sport necessarily. And if you go to like Finland or Sweden, you're going to one stage and you're walking 4 miles and you're probably going to get super hammered and eat sausages, and it's totally amazing, but it requires a lot of work to do that. And I don't think that it's ever going to be a mass market sport. But if we could just have a sustainable, good niche, just like soccer has here in the U.S., it's never going to be massive. It's never going to be football. But if it can be sustainable and, we've got 1 million people that are just pumped on it, that'd be awesome. But there's differences, I think, just between our cultures.
Even geographically, Europe, here in the United States, we'll drive, 12 hours to get to a rally up in northern Minnesota, or you can cross all of Europe in 12 hours for what it takes us to go to one rally. So in theory, all of Europe is able to see that stage for what we do to get to just one event in the United States, let alone going to Seattle and Minnesota and the East Coast. So just geographically, the United States is so spread out that if you live in the Midwest, you're only going to see a couple rallies unless you're going to get on a plane. Whereas in Europe, you and your friends can get in a car and 4 hours later you're at a stage. And I think the second thing is just the mentality of motorsport. These roads are public roads and need to be closed down. So you've got to go to all the landowners and say, hey, we're going to close your road for a couple hours on Saturday and a couple hours on Sunday. And there's liability and people are concerned. And you go to Europe and they're begging you to close the road and run down that stage. And because they know the town's going to sell out all its hotel rooms. And the guy's going to run out of gas. He's going to sell all the food out of his corner store. And it makes sense. But in the States, you don't really care. The people don't really care the way we do about rallies. So it's hard to get the roads. It's hard to get the roads close to population, and then it's a far drive for a lot of spectators to see the event, which is why there's 3,000 to 5,000 at a rally and not 50,000.
Okay. Scotty, just one quick thing.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. I think another thing too.
Maybe end on a positive note.
I'll end on a positive. No, I actually am. I got this. Don't worry. I'm going to take us out on this one. Here's the ender, guys. Here's the ender. No, another big thing that I think a lot of people forget is the kind of cars that we're interested here in America, right? So the hatchbacks and cars like the Fiesta have been popular forever in Europe, and that's not really something that's been popular here. So the cars that they've raced over the years, from the old Peugeots and GTIs and Audis, that's always been something that's been popular there. Now we're starting to change, and America is starting to change a lot in terms of the cars we like. I mean, even look at the STI. We didn't get that till 2004. Right, so we're not even 10 years now that we've had the STI in the marketplace here, and that's obviously a car that has been completely built off of rally background, and I think that's one of the big things. And one of the big things that we saw, you were mentioning before when I was working at 060 magazine, looking at the change of the type of cars that guys like today, and how all-wheel drive cars are cool, and just the type of cars that are shifting out. We're a culture that was brought up on the muscle car and drag racing, and that's very much the type of racing we've liked, and NASCAR kind of plays into all that. Big power, straight line, maybe they turn, but still, I think now looking at what we all like as cars, and the cars that are important to us, is what's changing the type of sports we like, and whether or not that's going and racing the Nürburgring or it's rally racing, and that a lot of it is dictated by the cars that are cool, and things like, unfortunately, the gas crisis and us driving smaller cars will actually make rallier cooler, because it means manufacturers are going to spend money to support cars like the Fiesta. And that is what's changing the sport and that type of stuff. So I think if you look at it too, it's more than just obviously culturally. Yes, Americans way prefer their big gulp and their seats like you're all sitting in right now to watch cars do this, well, that way. But still, I also think that a lot of it has to do with what we like and why it's bringing us out there. And those are the cars. So continue to buy fun, small cars, and maybe rally will get bigger and better.
All right, so I could go on about GoPros and rally drivers driving around in Ford Rangers all day, but I think we better continue the rest of our conversation in the lobby. And just want to say thank you, Matt, for the great movie.